All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Buzzworthy Bumblebee Fangry from the Worlds Collide 4-pack. So yeah, this guy comes, like I said, in a 4-pack of Buzzworthy Bumblebee figures. If you're unfamiliar with the Buzzworthy Bumblebee line, like the majority of the line is just like straight up reissues of old Bumblebee figures that like just end up clogging the shelves at Target. It's a Target exclusive line for the most part, but more recently they've managed to sneak in some new molds, and with this set they have a 4-pack that of course does include a Bumblebee, but also has 3 other figures which are remolds and retools of previous figures, but this was kind of the most exciting figure of the set for me, and this is Fangry, of course, based on the Generation 1 Headmaster Jr. that was released in 1988. Now, this guy uses it's a Titan's Return mold, or at least like based on that. It was used as Twinferno, aka Double Cross, as he was called in G1. They also reused it for Grotesque and Repugnus, basically the 3 Autobot monster bots. But now they're using it for Fangry, and yeah, they did a Titan's Return Fangry back then, but it was one of those like little individual headmasters that didn't have a body. It just came with like a gun, basically, that converted into like some variation of its alt mode. In which case, for Fangry, it was like, oh yeah, it was like a wolf creature that was like this big, and it also turned into a little dragon and a little gun. Cool, I guess, but like, you want like a full-size version of the character that has a body. Otherwise, like, what's the point of having the head if you're just sticking it onto other characters' bodies? So nice to see that we're actually getting like a full-size Fangry. And yeah, it's another use of this mold, and at this point it's like a 4 or 5 year old mold, so it's like maybe they'll do a new Fangry that's like its own mold someday, but I think it's a pretty good use of this mold. But yeah, you can see his little wolf bat monster here. He's got okay articulation in this mode. His arms, which just become the robot mode arms, just with different hands for whatever reason. They can rotate at the shoulder, fold in and out here, bend at the elbow, maybe like a degree or two under 90, and then the hands can like fold up like that. The wings are just on hinges here. The thighs here can rotate. They can also kind of go out to the side a little bit. He's got pretty deep knee bend just because of how it works for transformation. The feet can kind of like click into a few different positions here. And then for the head, his jaw can open, and it looks kind of goofy. Like he's got like kind of a humongous jaw. There's something about like the size of his jaw and just the expression on his face that kind of reminds me of like the art style of like Courage the Cowardly Dog, when they just have like that weird like giant mouth snickering face, so it's like all weird and kind of dark and creepy. Just kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, no, pretty cool. Nice that he's got kind of like the fur texture on the head here, and like sort of that's happening on the hands too. Like there's some sort of texture there, but it's a little bit less well defined. And then that is also happening on the legs here, but that's just like a carryover from the original Twinferno mold. And what's kind of funny is like the I do have that mold, but it's in storage, so I can't show it off to compare it here, but I can plop a picture of it up on the screen. But what's kind of funny is like if you look at the original G1 Fangry, like the arms that he had in this mode kind of looked a lot like the arms that were on the the original beast mode for that Twinferno toy, which, I mean, I get why they didn't just use those, because like on that toy, the robot mode arms became the dragon heads for Twinferno, whereas they needed something to do with the robot mode arms for this guy, so they did it like a bit more like the Grotesque style, where his robot mode arms became his beast mode arms, and then just like changed things up a little bit. But it is kind of a shame that like the parts existed there to have like much more G1 Fangry accurate beast mode arms, but they didn't use it because then they would have had to engineer something else for the robot mode arms to do, which probably was the better call overall, in terms of getting a good looking alt mode. Just kind of sad, kind of weird. But what's funny too is like I'm not entirely sure like why the arms transform, like spoilers I guess for the transformation, but like this is the beast mode arms, this is the robot mode arms. Not sure why they had to transform, really, because like these work well enough as robot mode arms too. Like the hands even look maybe even a little bit better, but like, you know, with Grotesque, he had like claws that were like facing down like this, so it made sense why it transformed or whatever. But like with his arms, with his hands oriented like this, so he can like hold weapons and stuff like that, it sort of seems weird that those wouldn't also just be the robot mode arms. But you know, they just wanted to add a little bit more transformation in there. He is a Headmaster, so he does come with a little Titan Master, just the same, you know, Titan Master mold as before. You kind of have to move the head up and then move. These panels are like, this is the same panel that was on Twinferno, and then they added this little extra panel here to have like the speed, strength, intelligence stat call out thing there, which I'll get more to in robot mode. But yeah, here's this Titan Master just sitting in his seat here. Here we have Briscoe, who the face, I'm fairly certain, is just the same mold that they used for that individual Titan Master that was released in Titans Returns. I don't remember if it's the same body. I know this body was at least used for like Overlord and Six Shot and stuff like that, but I'm not sure if it's the same body that they had for this face. But either way, it's, you know, a mold that we've seen before. One way or another, and it's got some paint on it, which is nice. They painted the head there silver and pink, which is nice. You know, articulation for this guy. You know, his arms are just on ball joints here, and then the legs can like bend together, but you know, and the head is on a little ball joint. But otherwise, you know, you're not getting a whole lot. But yeah, there he is. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good mode overall. I guess I'll bring on the other guys that came in this pack to show him off with. Here he is with Blackarachnia, Nemesis Primal, and of course Bumblebee himself. You know, you got to have a Bumblebee in the Buzzworthy Bumblebee pack. But yeah, they all look good together. You know, it's like kind of weird, this set, because the whole idea of like this Worlds Collide is just like four different characters that have like no business being together, pretty much. Like these two maybe, because they're at least both Beast Wars, but we've got like a Bumblebee, like a G1 Bumblebee. We've got, you know, a G1 Headmaster Jr., and then we've got a toy colors version of Blackarachnia, and then a entirely new character, like evil version of Optimus Primal. Just kind of weird. And like that's the thing with this set is like, if you don't want all of these, I would take a look around on like eBay and stuff like that and see if you can find like just the individual figures, because I feel like this set in particular is going to get split up a lot, just because there's so, you know, it's just like four different things that have hardly anything to do with each other. So it makes more sense for people to like only want the Bumblebee if they missed out on the Netflix version, or like only want the Fangry if they want that like Headmaster Jr. homage, or maybe they're interested in the toy colors black. You know, it's like, you know, I've seen online like varying sorts of like people being like, I only want the Blackarachnia, or I only want the Bumblebee, or I only want the Fangry. And that's kind of how I was. Like Fangry was definitely my most anticipated figure from the set, just because like the other ones are all kind of like give or take, basically. Like I don't need the Bumblebee at all for reasons I'll get to in his own review. Looks nice, the Nemesis Primal, don't need it. I like the toy homage, don't need it. This is the one that I felt like I really needed. Once I have the set in hand, I feel like I am into these two a bit more. Still have complaints about the Bumblebee, but whatever. But so like I you know, I am gonna keep all four of them, but like it is a set that I feel like will be split up fairly frequently. But yeah, that's what he looks like with all of them. I can get on to the rest of the transformation here. We'll just put our Titan Master off to the side for now. So the first thing you want to do is take the head here. It untabs, and then it's like attached to this little armature here, and it unclicks from that, and then it re-clicks down like that, and then that just kind of sits on the back. You take the legs here, fold the feet up like that, and then fold them into the calves, or into the thighs, I guess, rather. Fold the calves into the thighs. And then take these sections here, these pink sections, tab into this section here, and it's a really, really tight connection. So you kind of have to, yeah, untab it like that, and sometimes you just like straight up take it off of the hinge here, but you know, it's not too hard to put back on if that happens. But yeah, untab that from both sides, split the legs here if it hasn't already done it, and then flip the tail pieces out to the side. Take this whole section, rotate it down on the knee, and then take this pink section with the thigh on it, and then rotate it down. It kind of like soft locks in place there. Rotate the thigh around to become the robot mode foot, and just fold that tail the rest of the way down, and do the same thing on the other side. Now for the arms here, like what's kind of funny is like that looks fine. Like they could have just done that. Like these could be the robot mode arms. He can still hold stuff just fine. But it does have a bit of transformation. You know, you fold the hands up like this, you rotate it around, and then the robot mode hands are on the inside of the arms here. So if you're like someone where that gap really bothers you, you could just leave it like this. No gap on either side, works totally fine, and looks even a little bit better. I don't know. Like I tend to do the transformation anyway, just like, you know, keep the beastie mode hands in the beast mode, but it is kind of funny how the arms like barely change shape there, but still transform. And then of course you take the Titan Master and you fold them in half at the knees. Make sure everything's lined up there, and then the head of the Titan Master just goes into this little slot here. And this is a pretty tight connection on this one. I don't remember it being quite this tight on Twinferno, but at least it's solid in there. And then you plug it in like that, and there you have Fangry in his robot mode. And yeah, he looks pretty good overall. You know, like some stuff ends up in slightly different places than the G1 toy, just because like this is using a mold that was based off of Double Cross, really. More so than Fangry, but it works relatively well. Like, you know, the original Fangry toy had his like beast mode legs just kind of like awkwardly hanging out over the shoulders, so I think that's a worthy change to make. I don't know. But yeah, the only awkward thing about his robot mode is he does have the beast mode head just kind of hanging off the back there. It's a little weird, but you know, it works well enough. Now, the one big complaint I have with this figure is that the knees are like pretty loose. I had this problem with the original like Twinferno too, where the knees were loose, and they were looser on that figure than they are with him. But just with like him having all that stuff on the back or whatever, he tends to droop down if you have him in a slightly bad position or whatever, which is kind of a bummer. Like you can kind of rotate his legs out to the side so the knee joints are like, they're kind of working against each other to like tilt back like that, and that helps a little bit, but it is still kind of a bummer in general. But yeah, articulation wise, he's got the standard Titan's Return, Titan Master head ball joint here. Shoulders are just the same as they were in beast mode, can rotate out like that and then bend at the elbow. Still a little bit under 90, maybe a degree or two, goes about the same direction or the same amount both ways. Nothing at the waist here. I seem to remember that Twinferno had a waist joint, but maybe I'm just making that up. I'd have to check out the mold again, but yeah, he doesn't. This piece can fold up to make room for the hip articulation, so we can go forward and back and then out all the way. He's got a thigh swivel right there, nice deep knee bend, which again is just a little bit too loose. And then the feet, because they become the thighs in beast mode, they can rotate and they can kind of hinge down like this, which can be kind of helpful for posing if you want him to be sort of flat-footed and have his foot tilting forward like that. They don't have much ankle tilt, just the way that this piece sits. Instead of sitting like totally parallel with the rest of the leg, it sits at a bit of an angle, which gives him a bit of that like A stance kind of. But that works relatively well. They can only really bend the other direction, and it looks stupid, so it doesn't really have much in the way of ankle tilt. And then of course the wings can still fold in and back. He doesn't come with any weapons, which for me is fine because he's kind of a beast mode transformer. I don't really mind him having weapons so much, but I find it a little bit odd that they didn't just give him the same weapon that they gave to Inferno. I can't remember if they included that with. I mean, I know Repugnus had his own sorts of weapons, but I never had Grotesque, so I'm not sure what he came with in the weapons department. But a little weird that they didn't give him anything, but that's okay. Not too big a deal. But yeah, he's a pretty good figure. I can show him off again with all the other ones in the pack. Here he is with Blackarachnia and Nemesis Primal and Bumblebee, just to get them all in the shot here. And yeah, it's a pretty good pack. I'll kind of get into it a bit more once I look at the other guys and their own reviews. But just to start off here, I figured like he was a good first one to look at, since he is really like the biggest remold in the set. Like these two have new heads, but they're mostly just repaints of the original Optimus Prime and or Optimus Primal and Blackarachnia figures. And this is a mold that we've seen entirely before. So Fangry just seemed like a good place to start here. And then, just for another standard size comparison, here he is with the Siege Sideswipe, a mold that probably a lot of people have at this point. But yeah, he's a pretty good figure overall. He was my most anticipated figure in this set. And, I like some of the other figures, but I still feel like he was the one that was like the most necessary to me. I love that they did the little, Spudstra int meter there. I mean, obviously, like, it doesn't change at all. Like the original toy, the idea was you plug in the Headmaster and it would show his stats in speed, strength, and intelligence. But obviously, that doesn't happen here. But it's neat that they put that little tampograph there, because that's not something that they did on any of the original Titans Return figures, which probably was for the best. But I think it's a neat little thing to include there. And yeah, really not really a whole lot more to say about him. A good figure. My main gripe about him is just mostly the knees, and everything else is like stuff I can forgive. But that is kind of a bummer. In general, the figures in this set feel a little bit looser than their original counterparts. I mean, with him, it doesn't seem as much so, because like my original Twinferno had even looser knees than that. So like, he feels mostly on par, but it is a figure that is like 5 years old at this point, or a mold rather. So it's a little weird, but still a good figure overall. But yeah, I'll continue on with the other three. I tried to do this video as like a big, review all four of them at once, but it ended up being like 40 minutes long. So I figured I'd spare you and myself from that, and just look at them individually. Figure I'll kind of go in the line of like, my most anticipated to least anticipated from the set. So next time we'll be taking a look at Blackarachnia. But here we are this week with, or this video rather, with Transformers Buzzworthy Bumblebee Fangry from the Worlds Collide 4-pack.